All right, guys, welcome to Owning Your Health. This is the show that helps you become your own health expert. And we're going to have a little bit of change up today. Unfortunately, Dr. Holly didn't like doing the show with me anymore. She decided to take the day off. And so I brought in somebody that not as good looking, not as, I don't know what I'm going with this. Anyways, all right, we got an awesome show for you guys today. We are continuing on with how do you create really a legit healthcare plan and a health plan for yourself, and how do you individualize that. And we talked about diet, we talked about rest, we talked about the mindset of it, we talked about how do you create alignment as well in your body. And then today we're going to talk about the one that I think that in some ways is very controversial on what types of exercise you should be doing. At least in my opinion, it is. Everybody is really confused. Some people overdo it. Some people think that just walking a mile is going to change their life. I think that's called life, but that's just me. And then some, and so anyway, so we're going to talk about exercise today. And first thing we're going to do is get a kind of broad picture. So I'm going to introduce, this is David Lowman. This is my personal trainer. He works with a lot of CEOs. He's worked with a lot of famous athletes as well. And so David, welcome to Owning Your Health.
Yep, appreciate you.
Absolutely. He also has his own podcast. What's your podcast?
Yeah, Turf Talk with Lowman Health.
Yes. So check out his podcast again. It's awesome. And owns Lowman Health. And you're about to start your gym up this month, right? Next month?
Yeah, in Blakeney. Yep.
Sweet. Out in Charlotte area. So if you're in the Charlotte area, look him up, and it's going to be awesome. I've worked with a lot of personal trainers over the years, and I've been very impressed. So that's why I asked him to come on this show, because I want you to hear from someone that's what they do. Obviously I know a lot about exercise, but it's not my core focus. So I hired him for a reason, because I thought I could do better, and I am. So, and my butt's sore right now from yesterday's workout, or 2 days ago's workout. We're going to work out after this, and probably everything else is going to be sore tomorrow. So anyways, all right, David. So tell me a little bit about you. What got you into being a personal trainer, and where's your passion at in this?
Yeah, for sure. So like a lot of kids growing up, I was pretty thin. Played soccer year-round, graduated high school. I think I was like 160 pounds, and wanted to kind of change.
Wait, you were 160 pounds?
Yeah.
How much do you weigh now?
195.
I'm jealous. I was 160 pounds too, and I was always trying to gain weight. My most was, I got to 180, and now I just stay at 170.
Yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Well, I was 205 when I graduated.
Maybe you can change that for me.
Yeah, and what was really funny was my freshman year, I met a guy that's now my best friend. We went home for summer. I came back, had put on about 20 pounds. He's like, I need to do what you're doing. And I was like, man, I might actually be good at this. Nice. And so a lot of friends in college really asked me for advice on it. So I just kind of became obsessed with it and wanted to see what was possible with human potential as far as optimizing health. So kind of became borderline obsessed with what was possible with human potential. There's a difference between people that are normal and people that are optimal. And I know you guys are very passionate about seeing, labs beforehand and seeing how we can optimize those lab work on the back end too. And, I went very briefly to graduate school for physical therapy and decided it just wasn't for me. I don't like being on the reactive side of healthcare. I really like being on the preventative and proactive side. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated today, is seeing, awesome. Just keep learning everything that there is out there for us.
I would say, I think that was a very good move, because, that's just, some physical therapists is fun, but for the most part, you're just stuck in a place.
Yeah.
Like, you get to go everywhere. You go to people's houses. You travel around, and you get to work with all these different individuals.
Yeah.
And you get to make your own hours, which is awesome.
Right.
And so,
absolutely.
No, I think you took the right move there. So let's dive into the stuff that people really want to hear. Not that they don't want to hear about us, but they want to know what do you need to do for exercise, right?
Yep.
So, well, actually, one more thing about you. So you graduated with, you said in nutrition. So tell us your degree real quick.
Yeah. Bachelor's in nutrition science and sports science minor.
Then you continued on to get your personal training degrees and all that stuff.
So nutrition, all that stuff. Yep.
Cool. All right. So if you had to give, because again, it's a podcast, so different people are listening. It's hard to make it individualized. Yeah. But if you had to give just kind of like the whole world, hey, here's what you need to do for exercise, and then we'll talk a little bit about how do you individualize it. Yeah. So go for it.
Yeah, so I like to define terms, make sure everybody's on the same page. And a lot of people don't realize what makes up their metabolism. You hear that word thrown thrown out a lot, and I like to define it as total daily energy expenditure, and that's broken down into four things. You have your resting metabolic rate, which is 70% of your calorie burn during your day, and that makes up essentially, the clinical definition for that is if you were in a coma getting fed through a feeding tube, you would still be burning that many calories per day, and that should be the minimum calories that you're eating ever.
Okay.
The next one is non-exercise activity. So that's everything that you're doing, whether it's cooking, laundry, walking the dog, all the little things, going up and down stairs, all those little things add up. And that is about 68% of your day.
Even when you're sitting at a computer staring at it, probably takes more energy.
Yeah, like
even just
fidgeting. All the little stuff adds up. And then you have your thermal effect of food. That's the energy it takes to actually digest your food. And then the last one is exercise activity, which only takes up 5% of that equation. And that would surprise most people because a lot of people think, oh, exercise is what's going to move the needle for me. In reality, it's not.
Wow.
We see that the thermal effect of food, how much you're eating, all the non-exercise tasks are actually going to move those needle more for people than just the exercise activity.
So ultimately, you're essentially like not focused exercise all day, but you should be doing something all day.
Yeah, movement is huge.
Movement is life. That's my favorite. That's actually one of my favorite quotes is, if you don't move, you die. Because we talked about this in the alignment part, but 90% of the stimulation to your brain, right, which controls everything, is actually the movement of your spine. So sitting all day long will kill you.
Yep.
So just to give some positivity for those of you that have a desk job out there. Okay. So how do you take that now and say, okay, here's what you should be doing daily when it comes to exercise? Is there like, hey, it should be 15 minutes a day. It should be 20 minutes a day. It should be like all high intensity, short duration, or should it be walking? Like, how do you decide, here's what I need to, or should it be weightlifting? Like, what would you say is like the best all around for everybody?
So general advice, I would recommend a ratio of strength to cardio of at least 2 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, I actually recommend even higher, 3 to 1 strength to cardio.
Cool.
I see a lot of people over abusing the high intensity interval because of the amount of stress that puts on the body.
Yeah, and it feels. I think people do that. Like, I do that too much, and that's why I actually got a trainer. Is because it's I can't control it. It's just so much fun to just go all out all the time, and you realize, like, I did that 75 hard challenge, and I did all out for all the workouts, and I looked at pictures. Yeah, I was ripped, but my eyes were like sunk in, and I had like circles under them. And I took my testosterone; it was dropped. Like, my blood work got worse after doing that because I was so stressed out.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, like, maybe over exercise. The harder you go isn't always better.
Yeah, and there's a happy medium to this too. So let's say somebody's working out 5 days a week. They're going really, really hard, but because they're doing that, they're less likely to go for a walk in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So their non-exercise activity drops the more they do exercise.
That's big. I'd never thought about that before. That you just made me think about that. So so someone, they're like, oh, I worked out today. So then they sit on the couch the rest of the day and do nothing and eat bonbons or whatever.
Yep.
Wow.
So there's a really happy medium to, kind of like a rule of thumb is, I recommend everybody get close to 8,000 steps. We see general health markers improve around 8 to 12,000 a day. So that 10,000 mark is really not arbitrary. Mm-hmm. They've done a lot of studies on that.
Cool.
And that would equate for most people about 4 to 5 miles a day. But you can do that. And the way I break it up for a lot of people, and I think this is very easy to do, is do a 10 to 15 minute walk after your main meal. So let's say you're eating 3 times a day. Give yourself enough time to go for a 10-minute walk after that, and you're already knocked out 2 to 3 miles right there.
That's huge too, because it's a walk. It's not a workout, so you're still digesting food, right? So you're not increasing like stress levels. You're just going for a chill walk. And maybe throw some like classical music on. Put yourself in that parasympathetic state. You're breaking down your food. Most people just work during their meals.
Yeah.
Like most people just sit around and eat. They never digest that food. It sits there. They sit there, and then they just get fermentation and all kinds of disease buildup.
There's a couple other things that helps with. It helps with insulin sensitivity. It also helps with nutrient assimilation. Mm-hmm. So just that 10-minute walk is not just assisting your stress level, but it's assisting the digestion and absorption of those foods.
What he's saying, guys, is really big because the idea of that insulin sensitivity, that is when you someone that wants to lose weight. I'm not talking about just lose. I mean, this is diabetes, this is blood sugar function, this is heart disease. All this insulin sensitivity goes back to that. So if doing things like this is where you're okay, so you say that again. So you're eating, go for a walk, keep moving all day long, kind of keeps your insulin sensitivity there, which means your blood sugar stays down, right. Which means in return, you're a healthy individual as a whole. Your ability to burn fat is much better because if you don't have insulin sensitivity, majority, not all, because there's people that are diabetic and not sensitive to insulin and don't get fat, but majority of people are going to gain weight.
Yep.
Right. It's going to turn to fat.
Exactly.
So that's big. Okay. So you said, what was it again? Give me the ratio again of strength to
cardio, at least 2-to-1, ideally probably closer to 3-to-1. So
okay.
the way you would break that down over, and I like to do
so
this.
Yeah, give me a 5-day like breakdown of that.
Yeah, so you would do let's say 2 on of strength, a day of cardio or active recovery, another day of strength, and then a day of rest.
Okay.
And then you could repeat that every 5 days.
Now, what does rest look like?
So rest would actually mean maybe sleeping in, getting an extra hour of sleep that day. I think sleep is, I know you probably already covered this earlier, but how important sleep is to recovery. Just walking, let's say, a 5-6 mile walk would be a great rest day. Doing some yoga, doing some meditation, some breath
6
work.
mile walk?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I would be so bored for a walk for 6 miles.
go with a friend and
there you go. But the rest days, what I was think you would say and you did is an example of rest days. You're not just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah,
you're still moving.
I would probably get in a sauna for 30 minutes. Stuff like that.
That's good.
Read a book. Yeah.
Cool. So it's about movement all day long. So now when it comes to high intensity versus strength training versus well, actually, this is where I wanted to go with this. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. So when you said cardio, explain cardio, because when I was in sports medicine back in college, my undergrad was sports med. This was 2003. When I was in sports med training, cardio had to be 30 minutes to an hour. It was all about the time you did, not necessarily the intensity. And what we've learned since then is that doesn't really how it works. So explain cardio to people too.
Well, I think a lot of people...
Because I don't want someone having to be on treadmill for an hour. That's what they're thinking.
No, it's not. And a lot of people could actually be doing strength training disguised as cardio. So they're actually doing, circuit training with weights, and they're doing that 20, 30 minutes at a time. That's high intensity interval cardio, in my opinion. It's not actually strength work. Okay. Like what I'm doing with you, we're resting, 2 to 3 minutes on some of those heavy sets.
What I was doing through 75 hard was mostly cardio with some weights in there. And not to interrupt this, but there's actually, when you made me think of this, there's actually a study on this for testosterone levels.
Oh, I'm sure.
So you've heard like lifting weights increases testosterone. Well, what they found is it only acutely increases testosterone, meaning it's not going to be a big game changer for someone. Yeah. But they have found that it is a negative changer. A game changer is when you do a lot of cardio and weightlifting together. So like what I was doing every day, I was lifting weights and cardio, and it was all together combined. That actually crashes testosterone.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
So the way I would define cardio, and we actually look at this based on heart rate data, and so you have what's considered your aerobic base and an anaerobic threshold.
Okay.
Those are the two markers we look at when we look at cardio. Aerobic base is where your body is most efficient at utilizing fat as a fuel source. Anaerobic threshold is where your body is no longer able to oxidize fat and is only reliant on carbohydrates and creatine phosphate.
Okay.
So if your goal is fat loss, you want to stay closer to that aerobic base, which is going to be typically about 65% of your max heart rate. How do I determine max heart rate? If anybody's done this before, all you do is take your age, 220 minus your age. That's your max heart rate. Take 65% of that. That is your aerobic base, roughly.
Cool.
For somebody that's a little more conditioned, like a professional athlete, that number is going to be a little bit higher because the body's adapted to it.
And then to really follow that max heart rate, you get yourself, a heart rate monitor, or most of these smartwatch. I look at mine like it's a smartwatch. I got a $20 Timex. I like the cheap, simple one, the one you push 2 buttons on. But the smartwatches, most of them have heart rate monitors, right?
A lot of them do.
Yeah. So those are good. Or you can get yourself like a Garmin. But what you're saying is paying attention to your heart rate is a good part of cardio.
Yeah, and ideally you'd want to get closer to that anaerobic threshold if your goal is to increase your VO2 max. And your VO2 max is clinically how well does your body utilize oxygen. So if you think about like a marathon or triathlon, they're going to have a very high VO2 max, which means they can sustain a workload for a long period of time versus somebody that's just getting into exercise. They shouldn't be staying around their anaerobic threshold. And like I mentioned before, that's when your body's mainly utilizing carbohydrates for fuel. I see a lot of people going really hard, like you were saying. So they're up, 85, 90% of their heart rate, and they're just driving the glucose, but they're really not seeing any of the needle moving forward on the fat loss.
Yep. That's really big. Okay, so guys, we're running out of time here, but here's what I want to kind of give an overview of what we just pretty much said, or at least just what I heard, and correct me if I heard it wrong, is that exercise isn't just exercise. And what I mean by that is we should be moving all day long, and we should be doing something specifically in terms of cardio and weight or strength training throughout our week at about a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 strength versus 1 cardio. Is that what it was? Okay. Ideally.
I mean, 2-to-1 for a lot of people works just as well.
Yep. And then look at to individualize it. You start looking at yourself and saying, what is my heart rate and how do I keep it at that level when I'm doing my cardio? So you don't have to get on a treadmill. And this is, some people are going to be so happy to hear this. You don't have to get on a treadmill for 30 minutes to an hour, and I would actually recommend that you don't. And the other big point I think that he made here is that killing yourself every single day in a workout isn't the key to weight loss. I think most people need to hear that in this world that we live in today with the, I like CrossFit workouts, but unfortunately it's taken it to a level of extremes where women have massive 6-packs and big biceps and all that. And to me, that's not healthy. That they don't have a good cycle. Their hormones are out of alignment. And to me, that's not healthy, but we've put them as the picture of health for women, or even for men. The picture of health is ripped and jacked. And like I told you, I was ripped and jacked. I mean, I look back at that picture, and I'm not bragging because I'm not there anymore, but I looked at that picture, I'm like, dang. But then I looked at my blood work, and it wasn't the same. No. And I see this over and over again in our clinics. These ripped people come in, and you think they're the fit. I actually had the worst blood work ever of any patient in our office. Was a guy that has a 6-pack. He's jacked. He's only, I think he's 41 or 42, and literally about to have a heart attack when you look at his his homocysteine levels were off the chart. His CRP levels were off the chart. His cholesterol was just way out of line. I mean, it was just crazy how unhealthy he was, and quickly he was moving to heart disease. But when you look at when you look at him, he would have been on Men's Health magazine. Oh, yeah. I mean, literally. So it's not just about killing yourself. Any last thing you want to tell them before we close up?
So I like to sum up what you just said with the phrase minimum effective dose.
Cool.
Everybody has to find that minimum effective dose of what's the minimum I can do today that's going to move the needle. It's not what's the maximum I can do every single day to see improvement. That's never going to really work long term.
I love that.
It's got to be sustainable.
That is an awesome message. I'm really glad you were on, because that's what I want people to know is you don't have to go crazy. I'm repeating that because I keep telling myself that because it's fun to go crazy sometimes, right? It's fun to go all out working out because you get your stressors out. So every so often it's okay. So David, cool. So how can people hear from you and watch more of your stuff or listen to more of your stuff?
Yeah, so my website's Lowman.health.
Spell that out, Loman.
Loman.health. And then my podcast is Turf Talk with Lowman Health. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those.
Cool. Yep. All right. And I'll put links to his podcast in the comments section, or in the description below. Hey, you guys have an awesome day. I hope you got a lot out of this. And this is Owning Your Health, helping you become your own health expert.